There's an ad.
Good evening, guys and gals and non-binary pals. This is That D&D podcast, and we're back for another installment of our Improbable Interview segment. Before we get to our special guest for the night, let's go around and introduce the people who are going to be doing the interrogation and finding the documents.
Okay.
I'm Aaron, she, her pronouns. I do a lot of these, so if you've come to a lot of these, this whole thing probably looks familiar. Somebody else talk. Renee talk.
Oh, okay, I'll talk. I'm Renee. I don't usually do these, but I am tonight. I am a she, and I have been with the podcast forever. I just don't do interviews usually. So you were all blessed by my presence.
Hey, Mike Jitterson Berard, I'm here. The tech gremlins are my fault. I apologize. And he can pronounce it out the show.
We don't acknowledge the pronouns, the gremlins, the pronouns.
No, that's opposite.
Is it still International Non-Binary Day?
The 14th? All day?
Pronouns are good. Gremlins are bad.
I'm still tired from yesterday, and is my...
Don't feed either of them after midnight.
Okay. Disregard all the words that I just said in the past 20 seconds. Mel, why don't you introduce yourself, please, so I can stop making words.
Hello, I'm Melody. She, her pronouns. I am like a games person. I play them, I write them, I talk about them. I'm a historian, a writer, activist, do some stream stuff, often on Ash's channel. Hi, Ash, if you're listening. And I do sexy photos and stuff too. Yeah, that's me.
All right. Well, first off, thanks for coming to hang out. That's super rad of you.
My pleasure.
It's around lunchtime over there. We should... Never mind. That's an off-stream thing I gotta figure out. We should give people like lunch.
Lunch.
Be like, I hope you wanted this on your pizza, and then like you get a knock on the door.
It's a good idea. You could like come up with like a whole thing like lunch and learning. There's that comedians in cars with coffee thing. I'm just like wondering how like dinner and design. If you'd want to talk about games design, like
Dinners and Dragons.
Yes.
That's an amazingly strong pitch.
That sounds excellent though.
Okay,
So I think we've now developed our YouTube channel.
Yes.
I think I figured out what we're doing with Patreon money.
I approve this message.
Sorry, we can only afford to Uber you some McDonald's. Our people are being very supportive.
Whoa!
No, that is not true. Our people are fantastic. I'm just being dumb. For those of you who are a supporter, we do appreciate you. I thumbs up the corner. Focus. Okay. So we interviewed Luke again last week, and they said that we had to get you to tell us the story of the time you made them cry.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that there's two possible things that they could be referring to. I'm pretty sure I know which one it is. And to be fair, I didn't make them cry. I just created a game in which everyone else made them cry. We've got a convention here in Australia called Phenomenon. Happens every year. Last year, I wrote and ran a LARP for 16 players at Phenomenon called Red Sisters Black Skies, which was about the Night Witches. So you may have heard of the role-playing game, the tabletop game by Jason Morningstar called Night Witches. Basically, they were a regiment, an all-woman regiment of Soviet bomber pilots in World War II. And it's a pretty amazing story. They had the shittiest technology, they had very little support, but they were kind of feared by their enemies and had a huge impact on the war and that kind of thing. And I read the tabletop game, I loved it, but my background is first and foremost as a LARPer. And I love LARP. And so my first thought was how can I make this into a LARP game? Mm-hmm. So got 16 players together, got them to be a bunch of Night Witches, flying, the last 3 days of the war before Berlin was captured. That's the most dangerous part of the war. People are dying. They don't have enough technology. They don't have enough anything. And yeah, it was a game about a group of women becoming a community in a time of crisis, and how they navigate that, and how they come together or don't come together. And it wasn't really about the whole bombing stuff. That there was, basically it was 3 days, 3 nights. During the nights they would go on like missions, and that was just abstracted with dice rolling, because that wasn't really what it was about. That was just kind of a way to make consequences happen, and then they come back, and it's really about what happens on the base. And then at the end of that, it was really like emotional, and because people went through the characters went through a really rough time and formed these really, really strong bonds. And then at the end of the war, their reason for all being together kind of goes away, and they all go their own separate paths. And there was just this room full of people sobbing, and Luke was playing this lovely character, Valida, who was like the token Christian in the group, and started out as a bit of an outcast. But she became really one of the hearts of the community, and was one of the last ones kind of left at the end. And it was really good. And I cried a lot, even though I didn't do anything. Just as a GM, it's a very hands-off game. It's just it runs itself. And it was lovely. And Luke was wonderful. And there was lots and lots of hugging. So, yeah. The other time I think it could have been was when we were playing 10 Candles, but I think I cried the most. I don't think Luke actually cried.
I want to play 10 Candles so much.
It's really, really good. Oh, my God. It's an incredible game. Please play it.
Yeah, we're trying to get a bunch of people together to go to PAX South next year. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, we have the game, and candles do exist in Texas, so we may have to make that happen.
I have heard this.
Lies.
Candles and hats, I think, are the only 2 things that exist here.
And Tex-Mex. For now.
Which for now, yeah. Tex-Mex is good.
I just prefer Mex, though, is the thing.
I mean, fair.
It's hard to really separate that at this point.
Just take the chili out, usually.
But chili's so good.
But why?
Oh, it's baked chili, right, yeah.
Crunchy tacos are Tex-Mex.
Are delicious. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So is that more of a Tex-Mex thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so anything you would get from Taco Bell usually is Tex-Mex, because my dad's side of the family is from Honduras, and tacos there are the things that you can see. I think they're taquitos everywhere, the little kind of rolled ones.
Yeah.
And usually get that and a bunch of pickled veggies and stuff, and it's really good. But anyway, that's completely way the fuck off of anything.
Did someone mention it was around lunchtime?
Yes.
It's always lunchtime somewhere.
Especially when Mexican food is involved, because I could eat that any time of the day.
Yes. Also, nachos, just in general, regardless of what you think of them as, are an anytime food. I've seen breakfast nachos, and I have beheld them, and they were glorious.
So what's the base? What's the substrate of the breakfast nacho?
Sometimes it's chips, and then sometimes they get. I saw one place that did potato skins, and then the one that did I guess flat tater tots.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
hash browns, kind of.
Yeah, hash browns. Yeah, hash browns.
That'd be good.
Yeah,
I'd be out for that.
And then they had scrambled eggs, and then there's one place that does the sausage gravy, and you can get bacon and all kinds. It's ridiculous. Everybody here is gonna die from a heart attack, and it's probably better than the bad other crap that's gonna kill you here anyway. So hey,
it makes me think of something we've got here in Adelaide called an AB, which is chips, hot chips, as the base, and then on top of that is I think in the US maybe they're called gyros or gyros or something.
Yeah.
So that kind of meat, and then chili sauce, barbecue sauce, tomato sauce, garlic sauce all over the top. It's like drunk food. It's when you go out drinking and you end up with one of these. But now I'm wondering how to make a Mexican kind of version instead.
Well,
that would be
sounds
delightful.
amazing.
I'll hit you up after the
Frito
stream
pie
and figure
with
something out.
potatoes in it.
Sorry?
Like
What's
a,
that?
like a Frito pie with potatoes in it and
Yes.
like salsa.
That sounds real good. There was a place in Seattle when we went to Backpacks. There was a restaurant and it had a walk-up window. So if you're walking down the street, you can just walk up and order. And they gave you everything as a big burrito, but it was with the naan bread. And they had the gyro meat. They had feta cheese, lettuce, and they put a bunch of French fries in there, and it was amazing.
Ooh.
Most things can be improved with like French fries or hot chips or something.
Yeah,
Right.
just put
Basically.
fried potatoes of any sort in there, and it's better.
It's also
Yeah.
more addictive.
Mm-hmm.
So much more addictive.
I got back from eating like a little while ago, and I'm hungry again. This is not.
I don't know if
my
anyone.
fault.
I don't know if anyone listens to Friends at the Table, but it just reminds me like every couple of episodes they like start talking about food, and all of them are like, "Damn, I could really go on pizza right now." It's very relatable.
I love the food tangents, or like when one of them's describing an animal, and then like Austin has to see what the animal is, and he's like, "Look at that good boy."
And then he makes animal noises, and it's the greatest.
Luke says that
Chad's
you
already got a
have to,
question.
yes. Luke says you have to tell us about On Mighty Wheel.
Okay, so that's the game I'm running for Phenomenon this year. It's a tabletop game, and it's in a similar kind of vein because I'm a big nerd about history and the Soviet Union and that kind of stuff. So this one is about the October Revolution, the Russian Revolution. And essentially it follows kind of like loosely a family of 5 people who, just ordinary people more or less, who get caught up in the events of the revolution and kind of end up at some of the really climactic points. And the idea is it starts at like kind of a very dramatic moment when, you know, they're in a position of like being able to turn things one direction or another and make a pretty hard call. And then we kind of introduce that moment, but then jump back to like figure out how they actually got to that point. And it's about like the idea that, you know, with a revolution or any kind of momentous historical event, it's not really, at the end of the day, it's not really about the Lenins or the Tsar Nicholas. It's about like all the just random people who actually make these things happen. All the people who like are just people who are in the right place at the right time, who are part of these events, the ones that actually kind of, you know, driving the engines of history. And one of the things I wanted to do was like look at kind of early Soviet theater movements, because after the Russian Revolution, like Soviet Union starts up and everything, and for the first time, things like theater became like accessible to people widely. You know, like it was just a thing in the 20s and 30s that you could just go to the theater, which was had never been something most people could do before. And there were all these like kind of like really interesting artistic movements, people coming up with these really avant-garde styles of theater, but also autonomous workers' theater. There was this massive convention of like just groups of workers from all over the Soviet Union who like wrote their own plays, and, you know, they weren't trained actors or anything. They just came and performed them, and a lot of it wasn't necessarily very good, but like a lot of it was, and it was very like honest about their experiences and that kind of thing. So this game On Mighty Wheels is kind of framed as being, we're kind of seeing it through the lens of this family, like, you know, say 20 years on or something, actually telling a story, giving a performance about what happened. So I want to kind of like borrow a lot of dramatic techniques like monologues, you know, kind of breaking the fourth wall, that kind of thing, which will be interesting. I'm not sure how it's a little different from like a lot of the games that often get run at the convention, so fingers crossed it works. Yeah, I when I was looking for inspiration, I came across a game, LARP, which is about the first Soviet colony on Mars, I think, and it's a musical LARP where you have to like as in a musical musical theater, and you got to like sing and everything. It sounds amazing. I really want to play that one.
Yes, yes, that should happen. Some yes.
So is the music already written, or do you have to like ad lib?
I think you have to like ad lib.
Oh wow.
It's got like it's got like kind of like rough points, but you got to like expand on it and everything yourself. It sounds very cool. Given like there's a barrier to entry with LARP that is like a lot of people, even people who've been role playing for a long time, are like, I like role playing, but I don't know about the whole costuming and standing up and acting it out kind of thing. It seems a bit much. And then like a bit of an added thing with like, you might have to sing. So
you might get to
sing. A musical episode.
Right, but it could be totally better, because at that point why take anything seriously? Like
exactly.
You may as well.
And if everyone else is doing it, like it's fine.
It's the karaoke method.
Completely ridiculous, right?
Yeah. A friend ran a LARP game last year about kind of like this. It was basically like a world where everyone was kind of like furries, I guess. There were like various different groups of animal people. And there had been a big war, and then the war had ended, and now like various groups of people come in together to create like a festival to kind of like commemorate the losses and like move as a society. And the game was basically, she just had like a room full of things. There were drawing materials, there were musical instruments, there was stuff, and it was like, okay, guys, go come up with a festival. Like, it's on you. And like at various points, people just like started picking up these instruments and like making music together, like not having any background as musicians. And like, it was really cool. It was really beautiful. You just kind of, sometimes it just happens.
I really love those games that feel like just really ambitious experiments. Because you're like, well, I mean, we're all here. We might as well, go big or go home. And then just, hey, we made a musical, and also I'm a wizard. So, hey, that's...
It's excellent.
Yeah.
Music is magic. So,
It is. Also, costumes are great in general. So, I mean, if I can be a wizard, I'm gonna be a wizard.
Hell yeah, absolutely. And costumes are great. I thoroughly encourage like cosplaying for tabletop games.
I may at some point do that, but I mean, my big time where I could do that is dressing up with the kids for Halloween and stuff, and starting to get slightly more intricate with mine. Like last year, I made wizard robes with EL wire in them, so it makes your whole face glow.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very cool.
It was like greenish, and then I had this like kind of corrupted eye makeup stuff going on, so you couldn't really see my face, but it made the black super stand out.
That sounds awesome.
People at the zoo backed away from me.
Oh my gosh. You're doing a Halloween costume well if people are like,
Well, it's like, okay, this 6'3" person in a robe with weird face is no, I just, I guess it's a good survival instinct.
Yeah, true.
Luke has another comment in chat that needs dissecting at some later point.
Remind me to give you a copy of the Nordic LARP book about the coke-fueled Hamlet LARP in a castle and the fantasy LARP where the players ate real sheep. Yes?
Yeah, some intense games out there.
Wow.
Luke, yes?
I mean, honestly, if you're going to have a Shakespearean LARP, Hamlet should be the coke-fueled one. And let's be realistic.
Yeah, right?
Here.
So I've never done any kind of LARP anything, but if I ever make my way out to Australia, we're doing a fucking LARP thing.
Absolutely. Just or if I make my way out there, then
back south. There's going to be a bunch of people in one place.
Awesome. Well, I'm currently at the revising Red Sisters Black Skies so that I can like make it all look nice and pretty and put it on the internet so people can play it. And I know there's at least one group of people in the US, I don't know who want to play it, but hopefully that can happen.
It sounds awesome.
Thank you. I just like worked so well. I was so worried that it just like would not work. But players are amazing. And they will take something and just own it. And it's really incredible to watch, like them just kind of running away with it. I didn't have to do anything. It was amazing.
I was just going to say that just hearing Luke discuss the events. It was very much this is what happened. Like there was no concept of mechanics. It was just the event as it unfolded to everyone. It was very sublimely rendered vision of role playing or tabletop LARPing. It was just
the mechanic stuff was all like kind of like in these night sections, and it was really just like so I said dice rolling earlier, but it was actually a card drawing thing where basically you've got 2 people in each plane, 3 groups of 3 planes, and you got 1 navigator, 1 pilot, and you draw a bunch of cards, and they have either a plus or a minus on them, and you draw a number of cards equal to your skill.
Right.
And then you have to play them towards various kind of things. So there's you got to play a card towards the plane, a card towards the objective that you're working towards, and a card towards your kind of communication and synergy with the other person in your plane. And it kind of represents like where you're prioritizing your focus and your energy and that kind of thing. So if you draw like a bunch of minuses, which is bad, like you're gonna have to figure out, where are you gonna like cut costs? Are you gonna be not communicating properly with your co-pilot? That kind of thing. And you play them face down, so you don't necessarily know what the other person, whether they are like working towards the same thing as you until you see what happened. And especially with the kind of communication thing. Because, you might be like doing your best to communicate. Maybe they're not listening. But, it was just kind of, you do it, you play the cards, then you figure out the consequences. They didn't need to kind of go through every moment of the story kind of narrating it or anything. It was really about seeing what happened afterwards. And it just like really naturally led to all these, people came up with these amazing stories that kind of spawned off from these things. At one point, it was like right at the end, and one of the planes went down with like this beloved like officer, and it like this mass of people just descended on me, and they were like, "Can we go flying out to find her, like, and rescue her?" And I was like, "Well, it's not really something I had accounted for in the rules, but like it's right. Yeah, I guess so. Go for it." And like. It just became this whole thing, and they were like desperate, like you had to come up with rules on the spot to like figure out how to make it happen. But they were like on the edge of their seats, and then they found her and brought her back home. And then just like having this, because there was this, we had a really big hall, and then 3 individual rooms, and they'd go off into these little rooms to do their missions, and if there were people who were left behind for whatever reason, they'd be stuck in this main room when the lights dim when it's nighttime, and just like them kind of waiting for everyone to come back and like seeing who did come back or didn't come back was so powerful. And like those moments when people did arrive back and just like poured back into the room, and the joy and the fear and the confusion and everything just really was like super overwhelming. It was great.
That sounds rad. Another thing to add to the pile of games. That was fun.
And yes, Luke mentioned in the chat the trauma bonding effects of these super intense missions, because it was like you don't know what's going to happen, and that's one of the things that I really like about role playing is you can go to a convention or just play some games with people. You haven't met these people before, or maybe you've met them once or twice. You don't really know them. You play a couple of games though, and by the end of it, you're like blood comrades. You like go to war with each other, like because you've just been through this like intense emotional experience, and it just brings people so closely and tightly together in a really powerful way. And like I have so many people who I consider, incredibly close friends, because I've like played a role-playing game or 2 with them, and like now I feel like I know their deepest soul, and vice versa, and just had these really beautiful moments of like, camaraderie and solidarity and friendship and all that kind of stuff. So, and I tried to kind of like use that in Red Sisters Black Skies.
So you have a PhD in history, right?
I do.
So do you find that you tend to pull more from historical stuff than you do from creating fiction when you're making stuff, or do you like to blend them together, or what's your preferred method of creation?
Yeah, so I seem to have fallen into writing like a lot of historical games. I guess because I guess I'm just interested in it and knowledgeable about some of those areas, and I do tend to do quite a lot of historical research when I'm writing something like Red Sisters or on Mighty Wheels. So when I first started writing Red Sisters, I had the idea of possibly like trying to base each character on like an actual person. That was a bit ambitious, just because I wasn't getting paid for it. Like, I don't speak Russian, unfortunately. But what I did was I did do a bunch of research about women in World War II, women who were in the Night Witches, women in the Soviet Army, and looked for like kind of specific experiences and stories and backgrounds and that kind of thing. And then I incorporated those into the character backgrounds. So none of the characters there's one who's like loosely based on a specific person. But apart from that, they're not necessarily like, oh, this is an actual person. But I tried to, all of the things that are in it are things that actually could have happened, did happen to people. There's a lot of anecdotes in the game that were actually things that did happen, you know, like the Night Witches had like a literary magazine. They wrote poems and like stories and submitted it to this magazine that one of them published. And someone else organized a choir. There was another couple of people who had stories about sneaking off to go to parties with the men. And all of those like experiences made their way into the game. And so I ended up aiming for like historically informed, like emotional authenticity was my goal. Cause like, I don't really think that it's a case of we can be them, you know, we're not like actually somehow going back in time. And we're never going to be like directly experiencing what these people experienced, but we can try to be like authentic to the emotional world that these people inhabited. And that was, from a historical perspective, that's one of the things I wanted to do with the game, was, you know, when we're talking about the Soviet Union in particular, so my historical research is about how people talked about the Soviet Union in the 1980s in the United Kingdom and the United States, and kind of the narratives about it and that kind of thing. And a lot of the time now and then, when we think about the Soviet Union or talk about it, you know, it's a boogeyman. You know, we know about like the KGB and, you know, gulags, and have this idea of this, you know, vast kind of totalitarian state. And while there's something to that, at the same time, like people believed in it. You know, there were people believed in what they were doing. People weren't kind of, especially in something like the Night Witches, these weren't people who had been conscripted. It was a purely volunteer force. They weren't there because they were being threatened or anything. They were there because they wanted to defend their country. They wanted to. They believed in, you know, in the idea of communism, in the Soviet Union, you know, all kinds of things. And so one of the things that was really important to me was to be authentic to the fact that that people have diverse motivations. You know, people and people are complex, and they have beliefs that and experiences that are like different to the ones that we have, kind of looking back on it. And so I tried to encourage people to say, like, look, you know, we know X and Y about this historical period now, but when you're playing these characters, I want you to try and think about, like, try and look through their eyes as much as possible, and rather than like kind of looking at it as kind of a metaphor or critique or something along those lines. Because I don't. Sorry, I've been like rambling a bit.
That's what these whole things are here for. So, like, please stop apologizing for things going as planned.
You're just answering the question.
Good point. Yeah, and so as like a historian who works in games, one of the things I'm really interested in, I've got to sit down and write an article about this at some point, is that the idea of historical accuracy, which is something that we've had critiqued like in the media quite a lot recently. You know, people make a video game and they're like, oh, it's not historically accurate to have women in medieval period or whatever, but we can have dragons, whatever. I think the idea of historical accuracy is meh, don't care about it. Historical accuracy is on one level impossible, because we can never really accurately portray a totally different kind of world space. Because we're always going to be, as an audience, we're always going to be like reading our own biases into it, and experiencing it in ways that are about us and not about like a medieval peasant in the 13th century, or whatever. But at the same time, like, you know, and so on that level, I don't think it's worth putting like kind of fetishizing historical accuracy and saying that we must be historically accurate. I'm much more interested in telling a good story, but I think we can also try to be like historically informed, and it's all about being aware of that kind of difference. And I think we make better games if we're not trying to be like 100% historically correct, if we're trying to kind of like look critically at those things, and you know, make a point about them as well. And yeah, so that's where like the historical research thing, it's like it's useful, and I do like doing the historical research, but actually what has been more useful to me as a game designer is the kind of skills I learned in research about that critique and that kind of the idea of historical distance, and the way that we interpret information and like kind of create narratives and stories and that kind of thing, rather than the like specifically like the kind of historical, you know, looking up dates and names and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I'm a big history nerd, so sorry, you go.
No. I think it's an excellent distinction to make, that, you know, the point of playing a game is to experience someone else's perspective, you know, to embody this other character and maybe see what things are like if you were in their shoes. And there's a point where if you're so focused on being scrupulously accurate, you hamper the ability of yourself and the people you're playing with to really have that storytelling experience, which is the whole point of what you're doing. So.
Yeah, definitely. So, and that comes in like all kinds of minor things. So in Red Sisters, Black Skies, one of the decisions I made was about naming characters. So traditionally with a Russian name, you've got your first name, then your middle name is a patronymic, so it's like based on your father's name, and then your surname. So Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev. Sergey would be his father. But like when you've got 16 characters, it's hard enough to remember first names, let alone like 3 names for everyone. So I just didn't put patronymics in, which is like would be very unusual if I was being historically accurate, because it's very important to have your middle name.
Right.
But like that would just make it so much more difficult for the players. Yeah. So you're gonna look at those barriers to accessibility, and like it's designing a historical game. I mean, designing any game, but like a historical one is all about being purposeful and like thinking about why you're including certain things and why you're not including other things. So another example of that is that there were no male characters, not even really off screen or like in NPC roles or anything, because like as soon as it's a game about a bunch of women, as soon as you include like male characters, there's suddenly an us versus them kind of thing. People feel the need to kind of like emphasize that. So I said, like to players, you don't need to act out these characters as women. Just act them out as people, because they're all women. So like you don't need to kind of differentiate yourselves from anyone else. And the same, don't bother speaking with a fake Russian accent. All of your characters are Russian. Like, it would be weird if one of you had a fake Russian accent and the others didn't. So, yeah.
It seems like you mentioned that a lot of your historical work has been dealing with the impressions of the Soviet Union in Western countries, specifically the United States and United Kingdom in the 80s. And it seems to, like, so far a couple of the games that you've mentioned are Soviet-based. Do you ever get pushback for that from people who have like a prejudice or a dislike, like, oh, we don't want to do Soviet story? I'm just, as someone who has, lived through the 80s, I'm curious about that.
Yeah. No, not yet. I mean, I'm sure at some point. But I guess the stories that I've chosen have all been pretty, I suppose, accessible, and ones that people have a kind of a general interest in as well as a historical interest. So, the Russian Revolution is a great story. Everyone like wants, and people like in describing on Mighty Wheels to people, like a lot of people have said, oh, that sounds really interesting. I'd love to know more about those events in history. So I would play it for that reason. And same with like Night Witches, like it's the kind of story that you can't, like, everyone loves it. It's about a bunch of kick-ass women bombing the hell out of Nazis. Like,
it's hard to go wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially in the current political climate.
Right.
Yeah, totally. And so one of my other games, Laika, is a bit different in that it's about like a historical event that did happen in the Soviet Union, but it's not really about that specific kind of political historical context. That's just kind of a vehicle for what is basically kind of a goodbye story. In that in Laika, it's about being a person, sending something precious that you've come to know and love away and knowing that it's not going to come back. And in that sense, the actual specific story about Laika and everything is really, a kind of just a fictional layer rather than an integral to the thing. I think, in general, these kind of people want to know about these historical events. And, in role-playing, like you said, it's about putting yourself into someone else's shoes. So people have been pretty happy to... and, in role-playing, we often play, like, terrible, awful people who we would hate in real life. That's true. Yeah, I've been lucky people have kind of, like, been willing to run with that and interested to kind of learn more. Which, and that's another thing that, like, always to me is, like, where we draw the line about what awful characters we do want to play and what ones we don't. And obviously people have good reasons for like choosing whatever lines they want. But I guess I'm interested in that because sometimes I'll be like, oh, I would never play a character that does this. And then I'm like, oh, but I played this other character that like tortured a bunch of people. Like, why was I okay with that one?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, see, I was going to dig into the Laika because I wanted to know more about that. But what you just said was super fascinating, and I see I'm kind of wanting to do that as well.
Well, yeah. I've been having to talk about either.
So the like one is quicker and easy, at least for me to dissect. So I'm familiar with the story from a Jonathan Colton song called Space Doggity, but this is a one-person RPG. And this is a totally fascinating concept, and could you tell us more? Yeah,
absolutely. So, like it's a one-person RPG, and it's you don't interact with anyone. It essentially just involves sitting down and doing some craft, and then going for a walk. The basic process is you create, you represent Laika and then create a vehicle, a ship for Laika that's, going to take her to a destination. And then you have to take this vehicle which contains Leica somewhere and leave it there. And that could be just straight out your front door, down, in garbage bin if you want, or it could be posting it somewhere, or going for a long walk, really whatever. And
I can on the hike tomorrow.
Yeah, totally. Have you got a copy? I can send you a copy if you want. It's very sad.
Let's do that. I'll send you a picture.
Okay, excellent. That'd be very cool. And so one-person RPG, because one part of role-playing games is the story and the narrative and all that stuff, and that's also great. But I guess one of the things that I've learned from my background in lab is that the other element, which is just as important, is actually the experience, which is kind of separate to and beyond the narrative, because we can tell a story about whatever, but we may not always experience it in the same way. We might have unexpected experiences from a story that we're not expecting, all that kind of thing. And I think role-playing games, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, is that role-playing games are kind of, the thing that sets role-playing games apart to some extent is that they're an experiential medium of communication. There are things, so this kind of ties back in with some of the things I studied as an undergrad about religion and mystery religions in ancient Greece and Rome and that kind of thing, and theology and mysticism stuff, which is that there are things that can't be communicated with words. Because I can tell you something, I've just told you what Leica is about, but that doesn't actually convey to you what it is to do it, to experience it. And I think role-playing games are quite special in that they are a vehicle experiences. We can actually say, instead of just saying, here's some words for you, we can say, here's an experience I want to communicate to you that I couldn't say to you what it is. But here, I can give it to you, and then you can have that experience yourself. And I mean, so a one-player RPG is kind of a pure distillation of that, because it's a ritual, basically. It's it's like a meditation, or it's you follow a script and put yourself in a certain mental space. And one of the things that kind of surprised me but shouldn't have was when I published Leica, I had so many people coming and saying that it was really helpful for them as a way to put something behind them, or to kind of make peace with something. There were a couple of friends who had played it when they'd finished a job that they'd been in for a long time, and they found it a really helpful way to kind of mark that the past and the now, and move on from that. And it should have been really obvious to me that was a thing, because when I thought about it more, the original idea came to me for Leica from I had always been really interested in, the Mars rovers, the one that sings a happy birthday to itself every year. I love that story. I love space stuff in general.
It's the saddest thing.
It is. It's exactly. And I was I read about and watched these things and everything, and I was just amazed that we can bestow such humanity on literally a robot on Mars. It doesn't actually have any kind of sentience, but we can still have this really strong emotional connection to it. That was kind of the starting point. But then the Leica kind of thing was a really appropriate vehicle for that. But then I realized as I was writing it and finishing it off, that it was actually more about my own experience of a number of years ago now. We had to put down a family dog who'd been with us for 10 years, and she was very much loved, and we'd known for a long time that this moment would happen eventually. And just kind of it was about that preparing for that experience and letting it happen, and they're thinking about it afterwards and working through it. And so, yeah, of course, it's a thing that people are going to have that experience of like, yeah, kind of processing and, putting something in the past and moving on from something, because that's accidentally what I wrote it about. And Carla, the dog I mentioned, is now on the front cover of Leica. So, yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, so one-person RPGs. I think they're the way to go. Like, I mean, I love multiple person RPGs, but I don't think they have to be multiple person. Like, I am really excited to see all kinds of like single player or like oddly dynamic role-playing games that people create, and how we do that and like what it involves. I've tried a couple of things. Like I did another one for a 200-word RPG challenge, which is called Worthy. Which is good fun. It's about like, yeah, being like a fantastical hero and like having to kind of tell the world like why you deserve to do this thing, and then why you're like worthwhile and valuable. And it single player just involves kind of creating a mood and then like reciting words basically. And yeah, I'm excited to see what other people do with them. The coolest thing I've seen so far is the 0-player RPG that Aura Bell and Ben Lehman wrote, which is called, I think, The Tragedy of, I can't remember the thing. It's like a string of characters, and the idea is it's a planet. The game ends as soon as you start playing it. You need to go read it, because it's one of those things you can't convey otherwise. And it's just such a clever idea. And it's like, again, it's an experience, because it's not like, you can't even play it, but like reading it and thinking about it is in itself like playing it. Yeah, so if anyone's got like cool one-player RPGs out there, please send them to me, because I want to see all these things.
That's an idea I had never even considered before, and I'm fascinated.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we have so many games now. I mean, like, there are so many people making amazing role-playing games out there. And like, sorry, just one moment. I'm just recovering from a cold. I got a blow my nose. I'll mute myself for 1 second.
We do that all the time. A lot of the time we will idle on mute so that nobody hears my dog's drinking water, which I'm told is quite loud.
It's amazing the things that don't seem very loud until then you like hear it when it's been recorded in audio, and you're like, what even was that? And it was just, you put your phone down and it was like the loudest sound or something.
Yeah, I know that feel. Yeah, so there's so many amazing games happening out there, and people are really starting. People have always been innovating with the medium, but like, I feel like we're reaching kind of a critical mass where there are so many people from so many different like backgrounds, levels of experience, who are coming in and like bringing their own things into role playing, and really starting to kind of break our idea of what a role playing game is or can be, which I think is so important, because like I love a good sit down campaign game, but like a lot of the time I don't have time for like a 4-hour thing that I've got to like trek out someone's house after work in the evening, go play a game. It's great, but it's like very time consuming. I want to see like how we can do games that are like played online, and designed for that format, and like played with just a couple of people on like spur of the moment. And like games that just challenge kind of what we expect and the way that people kind of break the idea, because we can't keep doing exactly the same thing forever. So I'm excited to see like the new versions of role-playing games that people come up with. Yeah.
I found the 0-player RPG.
Yes.
It's in our stream chat. It's The Tragedy of GJ237B.
Awesome.
But yeah, like speaking about more people getting into game design and stuff, one of the byproducts of interviewing all these people about the cool stuff they've been doing is like, it's convinced me to start trying to poke around at it. And like, I did the 200-word RPG thing, and
yay!
And, like, That and especially like the queer indie tabletop community is super welcoming and helpful and great. And it's been like, hey, I have a question about this, and then just like a cloud of people arrive and help, and it's real good. And more people should make things. You're absolutely right. It's fun kind of seeing the thing you did just exist out in the world.
Totally, yeah. And like there's no like cost to making something. Like, and you know, I like, my advice to people is always like, oh, you've got an idea, write it down, put it out there. Like, you know, you'll probably, maybe you'll make some things that don't quite work the way they're meant to. That's okay. Like, that's fine. It's, you know, like, making things is how you learn to make more things and better things and things that do the thing you want to do. And so I don't often like have like a big game project that I'm working on. I tend to do like smaller scale ones. But like I'll just have an idea, like for a really small thing, I'll just like jot it down and put it on a Google document or in a tweet or whatever, because it's that like raw experience of like creating it and thinking about how it's going to work. But you don't have to invest like 1 million hours in it, you know. Not everything has to be a Dungeons and Dragons or like a whatever, like a produced, you know, art film thing. It can just be a tweet and be a game. That's fine.
I saw that when you did.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'm looking at two of them, right? Because you've got Brown Thusly also, and
oh yeah,
that one.
So that's the. So there was a while ago, someone did the 280 character challenge.
Yeah. Which
was to write an RPG in one tweet. And for that, I wrote one called With a Kiss, which
it's real short. Do you want to just read it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good plan. Let's see, where is it?
I have the tweet in chat. It's the first
awesome.
two I posted.
Legend.
I came prepared.
You were very good at this.
I tried.
Cool. So, With a Kiss, the entire RPG goes, you are two women parting as a society or institution or struggle collapses upon you. Step 1, establish boundaries and give a farewell kiss. 2, based on the kiss, take turns to describe who you are to each other. 3, when was the last time you kissed like this? 4, give a parting promise. Yeah. I was like, I was thinking about like how do you make a game in just like, how do you convey a game in that short words? You don't have the space to come up with a complex resolution mechanic. Yeah. And a dice roll in and of itself can only tell you so much. And I was like, what is like the idea, like actually kissing, and that like is, there's so much complexity in that, and there's so many potential like outcomes and meanings and like interpretations. It's and I was like, okay, just tell them do that, and like that gives infinite scope for like a story. And I haven't played it, but like you know, I want to at some point. A couple of other people have said that they've played it, and it seems to have worked very well. But that's
Even if somebody's not into RPGs, you could say, "Hey, this one's the size of a tweet, and you smooch. You want to play?"
Exactly.
And like, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So hey, you can't go wrong. And you know, you could just do it in a couple of minutes, no dramas. It could also be used as a setup for other games or anything. I like the idea of like these resolution mechanics that aren't certain and definitive. So you know, dice roll is you know, you say it's a d6, you get 1 of 6 results. And in most systems, it'll tell you this is what happens when you get this result. I like interpretive resolution mechanics, where you have to kind of, like read something to kind of like, and interpret it to figure out what the outcome is. And yeah, like I made a tweet a while ago that I like dice are over, like the human body is where it's at in terms of randomizers, because it's just like the way movement, interaction, everything is like literally infinite possible combinations and dynamics. And so then you mentioned Bound Thusly, which is the other 280 character I did. And this one I've been thinking about for a long time, and I will probably expand it at some point, but I'll read this one out too.
Yes, do so.
So, Bound Thusly. 2 players, Summoner and Demon. Summoner. Use the ritual gestures and words with vigor to keep this spirit bound. Demon. You move in dance, but are bound, small and closed. Each time your keeper hesitates, move more free, more wild. Eventually, touch, caress, devour. So, this one was like, yeah, I mean, I've always kind of liked the scene of like a summoner or magician or something, and with like a bound demon or entity of some description. Like it's very evocative and very cool kind of scenario. And I was like thinking about that and realizing you can do that as an interpret dance kind of thing. Like the idea basically is that one of you, the summoner, is using certainty and confidence and to like enforce kind of a code almost, and the other one is trying to break free. And each time there's like an opening or like a lack of confidence or hesitation or whatever, you go from kind of like being still to like kind of moving more and like kind of getting up close to this other person and establish boundaries beforehand, but like touching them or like surrounding them or whatever. And the idea is it starts out with one person in control, the other person not, but then at the end it's like tables totally turned. Ideally should be quite a like confronting, and like scary perhaps experience for the summoner, as it's like, oh shit, my words aren't working, like I've lost the upper hand here, shit.
I accidentally the whole ritual.
And every time they hesitate, right? It's it gets advanced further, which is going to cause more hesitation. And
exactly.
I found it extremely evocative, and I was super interested.
That's awesome. It's another one I need to actually try playing. A lot of the time I've just got the idea and I know how it's going to work. I've jot it down, but finding the opportunity and people to play my odd little games with isn't always there straight away. But if anyone tries it, let me know. I want to hear all about how. It's that cascading thing of like hesitation as well. It was partially influenced by. Leica was nominated for a Free Play Award. It was a finalist for a Free Play Award this year, which is Australian Indie Games Awards. And one of the other ones that was a finalist in the same category was a game called Detachment by another South Australian creator named Jane Cox. And Detachment is like a 2-player conversation where one person is like trying to be, and I'll find a link and put it up. I think it's somewhere online. One person is like trying to be like positive about their relationship, and the other person is kind of like shutting them down and saying no. And it's basically the whole game is like a series of triggers. Like first one's to say, you have to say this, this, and this, and the other one says when the other person smiles or whatever, look away. When they like apologize, like turn away from them, that kind of thing.
I feel like I saw this like on YouTube or something.
I was in a video for it and made a video.
Yes, you and Emily played it. I was like, no, that would make me so sad.
Yeah. It's even just reading it is like really brutal. It's a very sad game, and it's like, but it's so quick. Like it just because it's this cascade of triggers that just almost as soon as it starts, it's like bam, 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 bam. Like, I found that like very interesting as well. Just the speed, but it's still so like evocative and powerful. Like little micro games.
Yeah, I mean, those are also like really easy to propose to people, I would think.
Yeah.
Because, you hear some stories, it's like, oh, well, we played this game for 12 hours straight. And then you get some people get that preconceived notion that, oh, well, if I'm playing a tabletop game, I'm in somebody's basement and I have to like Cheetos and I have to have half of a day to spare. And this one's like, okay, well, we could play it in 5 minutes and we can be outside and like explore relationship things.
Okay, well, wait. Who are these humans that don't like Cheetos? I think we need to talk about this.
That's a good point. I don't think I've met anyone who doesn't.
Okay, fair. But have you seen those little things they sell? It's like little condoms for your index finger and your thumb, so you can grab Cheetos.
Aren't those just bugles?
Is that a thing?
No, those are witch fingers.
Okay. Now I kind of feel like I need to try eating Cheetos with bugles on my fingers just to see if that would even work.
But seriously, that's a genius idea, because like I love Cheetos and things, but I always hate just like having like powdery fingers.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't do anything else while eating Cheetos. Like you have to eat the Cheetos and then go rinse your hands off.
I have tried an embarrassing number of things in order to avoid that, including but not limited to eating Cheetos out of a sports bottle and chopsticks.
Oh,
chopsticks seems not like a bad idea.
Did it work?
I'm not that coordinated. There's like a nominal level of working.
I want to propose. You know how you've got those candy necklaces and things? Cheetos necklaces. Just get a string of
Except you just have a real like orange ring. It's like, oh, you were cheating today, weren't you? And they're like, yeah.
There's another thing, I don't. This makes. I'm reading your tweets from a million years ago, but the game will be eventually be expanded. You talk about I've been watching dance videos on Rage, so I needed to give this concept words, and then like I used to watch all these people dancing shows of elimination. I don't know what those are called anymore. And now it popped into my head about people like doing like dancing, like professional dancers doing this. I'm like, wow, I wonder if you could like pitch that at. I just want to see.
That'd
this.
be amazing.
Yeah,
totally.
For the next So You Think You Could Dance.
That's the show. Yeah,
role-playing edition. That would be very cool. I'd be up for that. I'm super curious to see more games that involve like dance. Because as part of that, like the experiential kind of thing I was talking about with role-playing games, like embodiment is such a powerful way to do that. And like movement, physical movement. And I mean, that's why like in LARP, you get up and you do things and so on, because it really just puts you straight into the zone. And why so many like theater games are like about like making silly movements or whatever. And there's a classic technique for like, you do a role-playing thing or even theater thing or whatever, where you just go, get people to like flail around a little bit and be very silly. And it's like a really powerful way of communicating a story and an experience. And I am not like a good dancer. I've never like learned dancing or anything, but like it's watching it. Like once I started kind of like really watching like music videos where people are dancing or whatever, it's incredible. Like the amount of like technique and like, it's just so impressive, the things that dancers can do. But also like anyone can like move around to a certain extent, regardless of level of physical mobility. Like everyone has some capacity for, the overwhelming majority of people have some capacity for movement of creative movement of some type. And hey, so it'd be a waste not to use that in games. And yeah, it's just really super cool. I would love to see like, it's funny you mentioned the like competitive kind of dancing things. There's a role-playing game called Singularity, which is by Josh Jordan and Aura Bell, and the transhuman dating show RPG. So, you know, like The Bachelor, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
It's that, except it's in like the transhuman future where the contestants might be a living planet or a sentient concept or like...
What? This is amazing.
This is amazing. How do I bump this into the Twitch chat? Oh, this is amazing.
Copy and paste, Mike.
Well, I can't touch my computer because I keep screwing everything up or whatever to my
I can see if I can find the link.
Copy. Dear Twitch.
Oh, Mel, have you heard of the God? There's this guy. It's like Brandon Gambetta, I think, made this. It's basically a telenovela RPG.
Oh, I've seen people talk about it. It sounds really cool.
Yes, I wanna try it out because I feel like that's another one where you can get like really dramatic and.
Yes.
I mean that's the whole thing, you know, is you can go over the top and everybody can just have a ridiculous time together. There's so many games I gotta play.
Yeah, I know, right? It's a bit, sometimes it's a bit overwhelming. Like there's just so many. I've got there are games I've been wanting to play for like close to 10 years now, and like haven't had a chance to play them yet.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone ever wants to play A Place to Fuck Each Other, please let me know. Sorry, I know this is like turning into just me listing games now, but
but what do you do in that one?
A Place to Fuck Each Other is about navigating queer women relationships in spaces. It's a 3-player game, and yeah, it's like it's by Avery Alder and Sheep, and yeah, it's about like. So the place to fuck each other is like it's just about kind of like trying to these characters who are trying to find this like space, you know, both in terms of like maybe a physical place, but also like in terms of a relationship. Place. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
That seems cool. To like have a relationship. Yeah, it's real cool. It's just like another kind of smallish game, but it's because it's so explicitly it's like about, you know, this quite specific set of experiences. A lot of people either aren't comfortable playing it or like just not interested and that kind of thing, that's legit. And it's also quite like an intimate game, which turns people off a bit.
And it's got a swear in the title.
Well,
I know. Scandalous.
That'll never fly in America.
Yeah. But yeah, back to like Singularity. It's like, it's cool. It's I mean, dating shows, yeah, that dramatic kind of the like over the topness and the like romance and stuff. It's very fun and it's Singularity is basically it's kind of like structured like, you know, like a reality show. And I can't remember. I took some notes at some point for a way to like translate that into an online kind of thing, and like use the kind of format of like a Twitch thing, but I can't remember where those notes have gone, unfortunately.
You could,
because I'd be very interested to see that.
Yeah, you could like just use Twitch's API and get people in like chat to vote and stuff, and
exactly,
it's like a whole game show thing.
And do the whole like the Big Brother like recorded videos and stuff, like today in the Singularity house, I blah blah blah.
That's right. The color blue. Tell us what you think.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Blue Made Flesh. How are you?
See, it'd be so much fun.
Oh my god. This needs to be like something with like you have to have like really high production values and like devote a lot of time to it. But that would be amazing. And there's like the other side of it where there's so many RPGs that like, as much as I try to think about like how they would work online, it's just, you know, you're gonna lose a lot of the feel of it. Like 10 Candles, you know, it's you can't do that one not in person. And
there definitely are some which maybe one day we'll all have VR just in our heads and be able to do it, but who knows? For the time being, yeah. Some, yeah, having that that in-person experience of 10 Candles, I thoroughly recommend it. Like, freaking burning things as you is just like very visceral. Like, as each time you, I don't know if for anyone who hasn't played it, in 10 Candles, the situation, you've got 10 candles lit on the table, and the situation gets worse each time one goes out, and sometimes you've got to put one out yourself. But the other thing is you've got these characteristics for your characters written on an index card or whatever, and when you use it to kind of get out of a situation or get a bonus or something, you have to burn it. And it's just, that saying kind of goodbye, is really, makes it feel very real. The stakes feel very high.
Yeah. There's one game I played. It was in some magazine. I have to see if I can find it. It's called like Scoundrel in the Deep or something like that.
Okay, awesome.
And the entire resolution mechanic is matches.
Oh,
so you're some dude who completed like a heist, and you're trying to escape through like the deep, and basically, depending on whose turn it is, somebody strikes a match, and then you like the GM will say where you are, and then hands the match to you, and you have until the match burns out to solve the problem using what you've got on you, or like you fail that thing.
Nice.
I love that. It would be terrifying, but I love it.
Oh yeah, especially if that's like the only light source in the room. Is just here you go, don't fuck up.
Dread's another one of those games that I have no idea how you translate that to an online space.
Yeah.
Because the Jenga tower is just so much a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I'm so keen to play Starcrossed as well, because so Starcrossed is the one that adopts the kind of the basic Jenga tower mechanic from Dread and makes it about romantic tension instead. And it's Starcrossed is the game of like two forbidden lovers, and like when the tower collapses, that's when you give in to your forbidden love, I believe. And yeah, again, like it's just that that rising tension, and I have heard that the designer Alex Roberts said, when she was first publishing it and everything, she was like, after you played the game, you may feel like you want to kiss the person you're playing the game with. That's just a thing. You might need to be aware of that going into it.
Navigate that territory.
Yeah. Obviously, this is a recurrent theme in games I really like. A lot of games about romance, that kind of thing, because that's again, it's one of those things that with role-playing games, it comes back to what we were talking about earlier with, there are some experiences that we're just this is an experience that we're going to have in our games. No big deal. We'll violence, let's go kill 1,000 guys.
Yeah.
But then, the idea of having an intimate, romantic interaction is very confronting for players, and also is kind of taboo in game. And I understand why that is. I get very nervous, shy when I'm have to do a romantic interaction in a game, but I want to keep working on that, and I think it's a really cool and valuable thing to have in games. And so I kind of promote and make a lot of games that deal with this stuff, partially because I like it, but also because I want to incept that idea and be hey, people, make more games about this stuff. Get people playing these things and being more okay with it, because I think that's really valuable.
Yeah. Okay, so we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes. Let's take a quick restroom break, a little 5-minute break to get water and, tend to making sure you do not get blood clots in your legs. Get up and walk around for a few minutes every hour.
That's true.
Okay, everybody hold your breath. I'm going to try something on the computer. punched. Hey, everybody, we're back.
Hello.
Hola, as we say in Texas. Howdy, y'all. One of those two.
There you go.
Okay, are we going down that path? Because g'day, mate.
Yes.
Wow.
Mike, what did I
Chuck
say?
another shrimp on the barbie.
Yes.
We don't say that.
I'm from Michigan, so I'm sorry.
Put mayonnaise on it.
No.
I don't know what Michigan says or does.
We do
Nothing. Nobody does. Yeah, like I'm from here in Michigan, and the other person from Michigan will say, "I'm from right here."
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm from Michigan. Yes, it really exists.
So if you're from the Upper
Michigan is shaped
Peninsula,
like a
you're
mitten.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, right.
Except for the part that's up here. That's
It's
not
a
quite
mitten with
attached,
a thing on the
yeah.
top of it, and it's surrounded by
Yeah, it was like a bubble on the top.
Yeah.
Exactly. Wow, I am. Excuse me. In other games that I find totally fascinating and I want to know way more about, so I'm just going to jump right back into not what we were talking about, but we could talk about what were we talking about? We're talking about the game when the tower falls, everybody wants to make out.
Oh yeah. But
Starcross, which sounds amazing.
Get back to. Yeah. It does. It sounds super cool. I'm very excited for it to be a thing, and play it lots and lots. Because the dread mechanic it's a great concept, and it's totally like when I heard that it was being applied to something other than dread, I was like, yeah, it's a good idea because you can use it for so many different things.
And it's literally breaking tension.
Exactly. And that's the really powerful thing about dread is the way that it ramps up that feeling of tension. It's that visceral thing we were talking about before. So that's very cool. There's so many games coming out that are just going to be amazing. It's very unfair to my time and also my wallet. But I was thinking in the break. I was thinking more about the kinds, what kind of stuff people like to do in games and that kind of thing. And I think the thing with Starcross and other games like that is why I guess romance is often a secondary thing or even a non-existent thing in games is because it's it demands an added level of vulnerability. I can talk about killing 100 orcs, whatever. I don't have to be vulnerable doing that. It's totally outside of my realms of experience. Not something I still have hang-ups about or anything like that. But asking someone on a date, well, that's even if it's fake, that's too real. So it's scarier to kind of do that in a game, but good. It's just matter of making that easy to do, and I think that. Oh, sorry. Was I shouting, or I just checked chat?
Okay. Ash and I were shouting at each other.
Oh, right. Okay.
It happens.
One of the really clever things about Starcross is that it's with that Jenga thing, it seems like it makes it really easy to do that. It reduces the barriers to accessibility by gamifying it and making it this fun kind of thing that a lot of the control out of your hands as well, because you're just following the rules when you do X or Y, rather than it being that totally free form kind of thing.
Definitely.
I don't know what's going to be next. I bet someone's going to come up with some other excellent idea for Jenga towers, but I don't know what it is yet. But I really want to find out.
I was saying in the chat, somebody needs to make a game where the resolution mechanic is based on pogs, and then Luke said somebody's already making that, and of course somebody's making that, but also I need to play it. Are
pogs still a thing? No. I've got a bunch of pogs from when I was a kid, but are they? No. Okay. Right.
Oh no, they should be a thing.
Let's bring them back.
It's you let kids hurl discs of metal at a pile of cardboard. I don't see where the problem is with this.
Where could it go wrong?
I mean, I've seen kids walking around with phones, which
Ideas.
is like, the sum collection of all human knowledge and history, and that's cool, but I can't throw a piece of metal at a thing?
I did have a friend in high school who used to throw his phone at people.
Okay, well, that's like mixing and matching the whole pogs and...
Yeah, a little bit. It was like just before just before high schoolers having mobile phones was like a standard kind of thing. And it was like one of those old ones that was like this big with like an antenna you had to pull up. It was as if it was invincible. So he just like lobbed it at people if they pissed him off. It was dangerous.
That kid later went on to develop Pokemon Go. Okay, so
excellent.
I was looking through Twitter, for our research that we say we do for things. You had a tweet recently that says, "Always take the devil's bargain. He may be a fuckhead, but the guy knows a good story when he sees one." Is the devil's bargain in general like a thing you wish would be in more RPGs, or like what is a mechanic that you wish would see more popular use?
Yeah. So I hadn't thought about that. I mean, I just like when I'm playing Blades, which I've been doing a lot recently, I almost always say, "Give me a devil's bargain," and then they'll be like, here's this really mean devil's bargain. I'm like, "Oh yes, I'm totally taking that one." So in a game I played the other night, we were ambushing some people who'd been sabotaging something, and I was trying to tase someone, and the devil's bargain I got given was that this person recognized me, but I didn't recognize her. I was like, absolutely, that's like the worst possible situation, but it sounds great. I'm going to take that bargain. Yeah, I mean, I think that's like, now that I'm thinking about it, totally, like, because it just adds that extra, like, it's that the thing that Apocalypse World and Blades does really well is complicating things.
Yeah,
like, so it's never just you succeed or you fail. It's
break
like,
your leg for an extra goal.
Yeah, and it always, like, even when you're failing or if you're doing really well, it's like taking the story and like moving it to new places. And the devil's bargain is like just a great way to do that. It kind of gives the player some extra narrative control, and especially because any of the players can suggest a devil's bargain. Usually, it doesn't have to be the GM.
It's kind of a nice collaborative, like, here's a thing that would really suck if it happened, but it's
drives the story forward.
Yeah, it would suck for me as a character, but it makes the story fantastic. So fuck me up with that.
And it gives you a mechanical bonus.
Yeah.
So it's not really nicely kind of like tied together in that sense. Yeah, I'm just thinking about like mechanics that would be good to see in other things. There's so many different like things out there now. I'm not sure. It's there's a lot, and it's very much like case by case basis. Yeah, I'm interested to see how people kind of keep cutting Blades up. No pun intended. Into like, because like, Apocalypse World came out, and then within X number of years, there were games that were powered by the Apocalypse games, but like barely resembled it, in fundamental ways, because they just took really actions or like broke it in really cool ways. I'm so curious to see that starting to happen with Blades as well, and like how people take that model and just like fuck with it and do something totally different with it, because it like Blades makes a really good game of like mission based, like drama, heists, like action. But like I'm curious where else that could apply, because you could really apply that to anything that has like cycles of like action and then downtime. Which, in the Starcrossed model, it could be about a relationship, or it could be about going to or whatever. I like it a lot. What I don't want to see it becoming like the only thing, because it does do a very specific kind of story.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything kind of that's like something I'd like to see being shared more like across games is like anything that's kind of a collaborative kind of thing of like players offering something mechanically to another player and another player like accepting it, like strings in Monster Hearts where you can tempt someone to do something that might not be very wise, and they get an experience if they do it. Because I think that just mechanizing those kind of like interaction increases the amount of collaboration that's going on, and gives people like the extra buy-in for it as well. Yeah. Burning things, that's another thing that would be a cool mechanic to see in more stuff. 10 candles, yeah.
If your character dies, you have to burn your whole player's handbook.
Oh.
All right.
I think there is a game like that. There's I'm pretty sure there is a game where like when your character dies, you like burn the character sheet. And there's another one that like I think this might be a game by Aura Bell again, but like, or it might be by someone else. Each time your character is injured or whatever, you have to cut part of your sheet off or something like that. Or maybe you have like a little like paper person, and you like cut part of them off each time they get injured or something. Which again, anything, yeah. I want to see people using like physical stuff and props and in games, because I find games that'll have a lot of numbers and a lot of different scores and things. So again, I've been playing it a lot recently, so I'll mention Blades again. I love Blades, but I find it very difficult to keep track of all of the pieces at any given time, so I'll often forget that I'm meant to be having a -1 dice on certain rolls because I've taken level 2 harm.
Yeah.
But if it was like a really physical like thing that I was holding or whatever, then I,
or like
harder to forget.
Like move this die into the timeout zone.
Yeah, totally. Yes. That physical kind of placement and everything is really powerful and like evocative as well. It's a ritual thing again.
That was part of an element of like the for Marvel Heroic role-playing games and some of the Fantasy Flight games where you talk about the dice pool and the GM actually physically gives it to the player, and if they accept it, it's accepting the potential outcome, and like that's a lovely thing that I can't do in virtual spaces.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and there are various like kind of like systems people have set up to do that, but it doesn't have that same feel, that like real
right.
Here you go, you're taking something from me now. But I'm sure we'll find like ways to do similar things even better.
Yeah.
I don't know what those are yet though.
Nerds are creative. Just give them time.
So, I'm going to use nerds are creative to springboard into this thing. Lonely Engines.
Oh, okay,
because,
right, yeah.
You and Ash, it's a collaboration between the two of you, from what I can tell. And this is a phenomenal idea. And will you please tell us more?
All right, absolutely. I'm glad you asked about it, because like I've been thinking about it a lot recently, but it's kind of like my policy not to really talk about it, because that kind of like not to talk about it on my own steam, because it kind of like almost defeats the point. So Lonely Engines is a role-playing game-ish that's played through Twitter and videos. Basically, the premise is you are in a city that's like populated by like people and robots, and you're like one of these robots that are like this kind of disenfranchised, exploited underclass. And it's about like representation and so on. Like there are you don't see other robots. You might see them in the distance, but you don't really connect with them necessarily. There's no movies about robots, all that kind of thing. And so you're like lonely and alienated, and kind of like at the end of you're being able to cope with it all. But then like one day you come across, as you're walking around, you come across a screen there's this like down in the underbelly of this machine city that's kind of got this message projected up on it from another person like you, another robot. And there's the equipment there to like film your own message and like projected up there. And so the idea is that you record just like there's these pre-existing messages. The idea is that it's a persistent game. So we started it, I think it was like maybe mid last year, possibly, with this one video that was like the first thing found there. But then the idea is it keeps going potentially forever, pending web hosting and so on. And as in the story, maybe people come across it and they see it and it like speaks to them and then they add to it. And that's the thing, that's what the characters are doing. They have no idea who this person is that left this message. But like the fact that it's there speaks to them and they leave a message for whoever comes next. And you keep these robots, these characters keep coming back to see if there's new messages. And hopefully there's a bit of a dialogue that starts and like connections that are made. But like you can't keep coming back forever. I like kind of the idea of impermanence and you can't that idea that you can't go back there. Like the past changes, and it kind of just came out of experiences with like I used to do like be on a bunch of forums and played a bunch of MMOs. And I had these like, particularly the MMOs, I had like these really amazing experiences where like when I moved to Adelaide, first year I lived here, I didn't really have any friends in real life. And I played this one MMO, Face of Mankind, like a lot. I made a lot of friends in it. It was like a really important experience to me. And then like a couple of years later, like I stopped playing, I like kind of went back and it wasn't the same. And the idea of going back was almost intimidating. And so I kind of, and then there was another MMO, Warhammer Online, which I was like, years after I stopped playing it, I was like, I love that game. I'll go back and try it again. And I discovered that it didn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I had these like vivid memories of this whole world that doesn't, like only exists now on someone's hard drive, that is not like there. And so that's kind of like something I wanted to do with Lonely Engines. And so these robots, you can keep coming back, but for you don't know how long. Eventually, something will call you away. Maybe you move to another city. Maybe you just forget about it, and maybe you don't need it anymore. And so there's Ash helped develop a Twitter bot that was basically like once you've posted an X random number of messages, you'll receive a message saying, look, your character has moved on for whatever reason. You cannot post any more messages. And you don't know when that's going to happen. So you can't really plan for it. You can't say, this is going to be my last message. It could be at any moment because you don't know what's going to happen in life. And so like, as within the story, it like when we made it got a couple of responses, which is awesome, but it quietened down, which is also fine because like it's still there. Maybe someday someone will find it again and add another message. If they do, great. That's what happens in the story as well. So, yeah. Sorry, you go.
No, I just so reading about it, about how the description, the poetry level of being a machine in this world where the machine grinds up every component of your life and processes it until it becomes something useful, and how like parts of you are failing and getting reprocessed by the machine, but there's this wall and that you can write your messages on until you can't. And then it's just, you're gone and no one gets told that you're gone. You just stop posting messages, and it's just, it was super, super like, really fascinating use of mechanics, as well as like again that really short kind of description of what it is and how it works is super fascinating to me.
I in the like its earliest iteration was actually like a letter writing game, where you would like play it like face to face and like write letters and pass them to the other person. But like then because it with using Twitter, it was so easy to actually kind of recreate the poetry level in real life, that we just had to go that way. And yeah, there's like, it's interesting because there's this tragedy in like the fact that, like, so there's this space that's like the one kind of genuine space that is for you in your life in this story, and then, you know, one day you're taken away from it, but like we don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing, and it doesn't, you know, maybe you don't need to go back to that anymore. Maybe you've left your messages, and maybe that's okay, that's enough. And other people, like, years down the line can still come and like get something from that as well. You know, it's a contribution to like a growing kind of body. And yeah, so like I wanted to be kind of like sad, but also like positive. And I want to, we were talking about like weird mechanics and like new ways of resolving things and that kind of thing. I would love to see people figuring out how to use, you know, Twitter or whatever to as part of role-playing games. I've got a couple of ideas that involve using like interactive fiction prompts and things like that for games, because we have these resources now that we've never had. Like in the 70s or whatever, you know, you had books and dice and pen and paper and miniatures. That's what you had. Now we have like anything. There's computer programs that do whatever. We have more powerful computers in our telephones than like than existed at all at that time. So we might as well use that stuff and like figure out how that changes our hobby and like what new doorways that those things open up. And I like monologues in games. That was another part of like Lonely. I like the idea of like just like a message, you know, like a monologue kind of message that you send out as like part of a delayed dialogue rather than a like kind of chronologically linear one.
It's kind of like an asynchronous, one-sided.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm not the best at like doing the dramatic monologue thing, but I want to get, it's a skill I want to work on. So
yeah. Okay, so while we're talking about, you know, games you made with Ash, you also made Goblin Heart together. We talked with her a little bit about that. Do you want to go into some detail about Goblin Heart?
Yeah, sure. So Goblin Heart's a game about being goblins. It's great fun. We were like, okay, what would a game about goblins be about? Because, you know, you could make a game about being goblins as just like Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, but like that's not what goblins are about. And like, so we sat down and we were brainstorming. This all happened in an evening. We were just like chatting about this, and then we wrote the whole game. And as you do. And so we're just like, okay, like what's the deal with, what is appealing about Goblin? I was kind of informed by Avery Alder has like talked about a philosophy she has of like kind of goblinness and goblin community and stuff, which is about like kind of like community and like improvised, you know, like finding your own spaces and being like outside of the mainstream of society. And like looking after each other, that kind of thing. And it was kind of inspired by that. And we're like, okay, so like goblins, they're like loud, noisy, obnoxious, but they're like a tight-knit community. They're there for each other. They're like, you know, they're productively and constructively like loud and noisy and obnoxious, you know. What are the good things about goblins? The good things, they just get shit done. They do what they do whatever comes to mind, you know. Like as someone with ADHD, very much that's something I very much feel is like just goblins just like they're like, oh, here's a cool idea, yeah, that's such a cool idea, let's go do it now. Instead of like, you know, having to plan out a whole thing and like, so we kind of tried to build those into a game. We're like, okay, it's just a bunch of goblins. They want to go do some cool stuff, and so we tried to adopt that like kind of tone and like language and wrote most of the game in kind of a goblin-y style, if I remember correctly. And like the main mechanic is a dice roll mechanic. We decided how that would work based on how many dice feels really to hold at one time. And like how many dice feels good to roll. Because it's goblins. You don't need to like plan out these, statistically best things. Just go with whatever is best. And there's like mechanics for like helping people. And it really emphasizes, this was something Ash, like a later development that Ash really was the genius behind, was like having these mechanics for like helping people and kind of prioritizing that. And so you each have like multiple, in theory, like you can have multiple goblins if you want. And so it just ends up being this raging storm of like people coming up with bizarre ideas. We played one game where we were trying to steal something. I think we were trying to steal a car from someone because our goblins lived under a bridge and were like amazed by these dragon engines that kept roaring above. And so we decided we wanted to steal one. And our goblins, one of them was like, had a skill of being really good at pretending to be a human. So at one point, like, we were trying to stop this car. So this like goblin like walked across a pedestrian crossing and like stopped in the middle and was like just shouting at people in the very typical, is it like the New York thing? Like, hey, what are you doing? I'm trying to walk here. Because that's what humans do. Yeah. And it's got like a discern realities kind of thing like in Dungeon World, but the questions you get to ask are things like, where's Gubbins? Who has a grump? And it's like, nowhere does it say what Gubbins is. You just got to figure that out. It's up to you. What do you think Gubbins is? And it's just a really fun, like, easy to play, easy to run game that's kind of like really to the point. And you can play with like 10 players, no dramas. It's just a big, loud disaster. Everyone gets really into it. When we played it, everyone's like jumping up and down and like shouting, like acting out goblin things. There was at one moment, there was like I think there's a video of it or a GIF of it somewhere on my Twitter way back. Like they did the two goblins in a trench coat pretending to be a person thing. And one of them was the hands and the other one was like doing the talking. And so that two people got up and like one person went behind the other and was like doing this while the other person was talking. And it just so naturally like developed into that stuff. So if you like very silly, very fun games with a point, go play Goblin Heart. It's lovely.
That's super. There's so many of these freaking games. I gotta. Okay, so this is a question that's actually slightly tangential or related to the previous one. So you were saying in the in Goblin Heart, there's a sense of goblins being about like finding your own space and then forming a community and stuff. We've been trying to do that same thing for a little while now, and we've been pushing a little bit more for being more inclusive and just kind of a more welcoming place. But it seems like a lot of RPGs in general super aren't that, and are doing crap with Nazis and stuff. So, what can we as a big group of nerdy goblins do to help make tabletop gaming like more welcoming and less shit?
It's a big question. I think what we and what you guys are doing is like already awesome. Like doing stuff like this, I think a large part of it is just being loud and like being engaged in dialogue about like, yes, we do need to talk about the bad stuff and critique the bad things, like those issues you mentioned, which I got to admit, I'm a mod on a Facebook group that's called RPG Opinions, and it's been the last week or so. It's been a time, but that is important to do. But like, I think even important than like critiquing the shitty stuff is showing that there is so much amazing cool stuff out there. And I think that's like we're reaching kind of a critical mass, and like we've got streaming, we've got like things happening on Twitter, on Facebook. People are making so many amazing games, and things like podcasts are really, really great. I like about 2 months ago, over the course of like 3 days, I had 2 separate work colleagues who had no contact with each other previously approach me and be like, so I started listening to this thing called the Adventure Zone, and now I want to do role-playing games.
It's like, hold on, slow down. They're not all like that.
Yeah. And so I think by like just, I guess by talking about what it is we do and being excited about it and like doing cool stuff, I think we're like kind of planting the seeds for people to come across this stuff and be like, oh, that's amazing, I'll get involved. And I think that, like that's key to kind of making it a more inclusive and diverse community, is just getting more people involved, and giving them, like, role-playing has a like pretty like some like a lot of the way we talk about role-playing and do role-playing is often quite high barrier to entry, in the sense of like there's a lot of jargon and it's really easy to slip into, like when we're talking, say there's like 3 people chatting who know role-playing games and then like one person who's their friend who doesn't play it, like it's super easy for those 3 people to just be like talking about the game they've been playing together and just talk about the jargon and what their cookers are doing and stuff. And now the 4th person's like, oh, okay, I don't really know what's going on, I'm not going to listen. And I think so if we like endeavor to make it accessible and provide opportunities to people, that we can get it in and like kind of like, yeah, just grow those communities. So here in Adelaide, we it was like 4 years ago now, gosh, a while, we started something called Adelaide Role Playing Community, which is a not-profit community group that exists to promote role-playing in the community and specifically to enable and facilitate people to be able to get into LARPs and LARPing and that kind of stuff. Because if you want to run a LARP, you need like a venue, you need insurance, you need resources and everything. So it's much easier to facilitate that if there's like an organization with funding and equipment and that kind of thing. And the whole point of that is to make these things accessible and to be like, hey, you've never done this before, that's fine. We do not have like advanced only games. You can be a beginner, come along, try it out. And it like, we were really blown away by like how quickly it grew, and it's now like there's games happening every weekend. It's really amazing. Wow. Because people want to do this stuff. Like, sure, there are people who are like, oh, role playing, that sounds silly, but for each person who's like that, there are like many more people who are like, that sounds kind of fun. I've seen that Community episode about Dungeons and Dragons. I kind of want to try that. Like, and they like, maybe they just feel embarrassed and shy, or they just don't know anyone who does it. That's the real problem here, at least, is like people want to play role-playing games, but they can't find a group. And I think that once we like open those doors and get gaming happening outside of, the local gaming store, whatever, in people's houses and communities, whatever, I think the dynamics just going to naturally keep changing. And I think in the last couple of years we've already done an amazing job. Like, I feel some of the places that have had serious issues recently.
Bless you.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like, to some extent, a lot of those are like lost causes, in the sense that they are like legacy publishing, that kind of thing. They've been around for a long time. They've, it's, it was kind of like likely to happen to some extent, but then there's a lot of other things that are new starting up that are doing really, really awesome things. So which I guess if we there is still a thing where like role-playing publishing is kind of dominated by a couple of really big key players, but it does seem to be changing. So
Yeah.
I think that's going to help.
And I think digital distribution and stuff like that's helped a lot.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm sure there's a million different factors, but from when I first started playing tabletop games like 5-6 years ago to now, it's just the amount of like diversity in the authors and the mechanics and like the stuff that you're exploring and stuff. There's just so much more, and it's nice to know it's not just Dungeons and Dragons. And if somebody likes Dungeons and Dragons, that's totally fine. But like for the people that doesn't quite mesh with, you have like this huge web of like, you know, here's a million things you can try.
Right.
It's like,
Other things.
Yeah. Have you tried smooching someone and then talking about it?
It could be for you. You won't know till you try.
Some of like my favorite games are about like really mundane things. There's a game that I haven't played but I would love to play. I think it's called 10 Days or 14 Days maybe. That's about migraines and like being a person who has chronic migraine. And like it's such a beautiful game, and like just a game does not have to be epic. And a lot of people aren't into like big epic, you know, Lord of the Rings kind of thing.
Right.
And would much rather tell a cool story about like a telenovela or something else. So I was reading a book recently which was trying to define, part of the book that like was defining RPGs and that kind of thing, which I think is again lost cause, but that's not the point. One of the things they said was like typically RPGs have been genre kind of things, you know, sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and I mean that still is true, and that's not a bad thing. But I think it's cool to like break out of that mold a bit as well, because a lot of, I mean, there are heaps of people who I've talked to who are just like, yeah, I just don't like science fiction. It's just not my thing. And it's like, well, fair enough. Like
spaceships are dumb and boring, and you're just like,
I mean, they're wrong, but
yes,
I respect their opinion.
People are free to be wrong as long as you're not acting.
Exactly.
Right. Well, and it's nice to have a lot of variety, and especially with the smaller things, because like for me, listening to you describe some of these games, it's very much it kind of crosses the line into just interactive storytelling, which is really less intimidating, I think, for a lot of people, and really kind of relatable, and especially if it's kind of a relatable circumstance. In fact, a couple of them really remind me, and it's not obviously a tabletop game, but one of the most just stunning experiences that I've had playing a video game was What Remains of Edith Finch. And it's just such a mundane, you think it's just this mundane story, and of course it pulls in some adventure-y kind of things, but it really centers around just, it's not epic, it's not, you know, a giant fantasy, it's a small story about this one person, and it really can be such a powerful experience, especially with these RPGs that just have a couple of people or that are just for you, and that it really can be, even for people who really like epic adventures but don't know where to start, it's a great place to start kind of getting into how do you do this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, because it's like, it's a lot of people are kind of turned off by like, I mean, a lot of people say, I'm not very creative, I can't come up with like a character story or whatever. They're wrong. Anyone can. Yeah, if it's just like a more grounded in their own experiences, it's like immediately more relatable and comfortable for them. And yeah, there are so many video games that, like Gone Home, I don't know if you played that. That's another one. It's just like, I haven't,
but I know a lot about it, and it definitely needs to be one of those just very like, here's how to get in touch with your inner self kind of, you know, personal experience. And I like seeing more of those things, you know, in both of these kinds of media, because it is a more personal, interactive storytelling experience, and it just can mean a lot, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I really want to play that as another one. And another kind of like angle is we're back to kind of the diversity and inclusion thing, is that the like predominance of these genre kind of stories, I think, has probably kind of contributed towards, I guess, the gendering and like the what the RPGing community is and that kind of thing. Obviously, women and, you know, people of color and disabled people have always been in role playing games, but like there is, you know, we're all familiar with this perception that it's it's a boys' club. It's a particular demographic, and I think that like if we start to break away more from these epic, you know, genre stories, which I do love, we will like there'll be more opportunities for people to explore the, like, you know, women's stories and things like that come from the margins and that are like historically have been dismissed as being like, you know, not interesting or not worthy of telling the story about, but actually are really profound and that kind of thing. Like there's another game called Marinara that's about, you each bring an ingredient and then you make pasta together and eat a meal, and like the game about that, but literally you bring an ingredient and make a meal. And like 15 years ago, like that would be, that's not a role-playing game, that's, I don't know, it's whatever, but there's like profound and very human like things to be found in that. And that's like an area, you know, cooking, that's like traditionally a women's thing. So I think that by like opening the door to these other kinds of experiences that may seem on the surface to be uninteresting or not worthy of telling stories about, by opening the door to them and encouraging them, giving people the tools to make them, I think we're going to be able to bring in like whole realms, new like experiences and that kind of thing that to be represented in our games.
Yeah. All right, so I think we just hit like 2-ish hours. I've got to head to bed soon. Do we want to do like a wrap-up question or anything, or do we want to get to the? Does anybody have any pressing last questions you would like to ask? Speak now.
Well, I'll say the typical end of things was we hold all the super interesting ones for next time to make sure that you come back.
Nice, yeah. Yes. Anytime, just, you know my number, call me.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, so I guess Mel, if you want to do your summary and outro again, and also at the end include a non-capitalist plug for the day.
Non-capitalist plug for the day. Excellent. Okay. So, my summary is I'm Melody Watson. I make games, I talk about games, I play games a lot. I'm a writer, historian, activist, cyber smut poet. I also do modeling and make smutty photos for Patreon. You can find my website at melodynova.com. It's got my portfolio. It's got links to all my other stuff. You can also find me on Twitter, where I talk a lot of shit, at Magic Space Girl. And again, that's got links to all my other stuff. Or Patreon is patreon.com/melodynova. That's me. She, her pronouns, I guess. Love you all. My anti-capitalist plug for the day is we each and like collectively have the capacity to seize the means of game making production. So you should do that and just start making a bunch of games. You know, like, I didn't think anyone was going to play Leica, but I was very wrong. Make the game that you want to make, and there will be people for it.
Very nice. I guess if we're going backwards, Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike. He, him pronouns. Find me here. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Wednesdays, Saturdays sometimes. Apparently I'm here a lot. Be kind to animals. Also, like, there's a lot of people that need some help, so be kind, try to be helpful, be the change you want to see in the world, etc. So,
all right,
yeah.
Renee.
I had a really good time. This was fun times. I should do this more, I guess.
You should. You're in the circle now.
That's true. It's true.
One of us.
I guess my plug would be to patronize your local library. Even if you aren't a reader, you'd be amazed at the things they have for you, and we need them.
Yes, that's very good. Okay, so part one of my outro, I'll do the podcast stuff. If you like the stuff that we do, you can find us on Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, Twitch. I think that's it so far. And any podcast delivery method of choice, just look for that D&D podcast, the letter N and not an ampersand. If you would like to visit our website and kind of listen to 4 years of episodes, you can go to thatdndpodcast.com. If you have questions, comments, criticisms, anything like that, suggestions, you can go and email us at thatdndpodcast@gmail.com. You may notice a similarity in the naming scheme. I'm not original. I think that's all the stuff. Yeah, if you want to, if you like the things we buy food for people we interview, you can go, like I said, to Patreon. Look for that D&D podcast. It can't be Dinners and Dragons without you. Okay. So for my part of things, I talk about a lot of bullshit on YouTube, or not YouTube, Twitter. It's usually selfies, food, flirting, arguing with people, and trying to provide support for queer folks where I can. You can look for the Road Virus _. I have been streaming recently on Twitch. I've been doing like cooking streams because I like to share food history and stuff with people. Like, these are the things I care about. And if I can't directly hand you a bowl of food, we can hang out and talk while I make it. So if you want to do that, you can go to twitch.tv/theroadvirus. There's underscores between all the words. I just hit affiliate status, so I'm still working on an emote, but if you want to throw money my way, I think I've got a PayPal link on my Twitter if you want to help fund surgery things. That would be rad because insurance bullshit, even though I work for an insurance company. And my non-capitalist plug of the day is if you enjoy some creative thing that somebody made, take the time to let them know not only that you enjoyed it, but how it affected you. There are a lot of people who suffer from depression or feel like their work is unappreciated. So you can directly increase the amount of sunshine in the world by letting one person know that they've had an effect on your life. So I think that's all for my rambling.
I have to click the off button.
Okay, so until next time, everybody, keep watching our crap on YouTube, I guess. I don't know, keep being cool.